teach?
Rip. Plaster.
Paint. Destroyed, bruh.
If you're like this,
You shouldn't be driving.
Before the event starts, you know it's going to get interesting, but the Home Run Derby, it delivers because you just sit back and you watch dudes hit bombs. We got the All-Star Game tonight, but so much news swirling around the college football world that could be a game changer for the teams that are fighting to climb up that ladder in the Mountain West Conference. What it do in a good Tuesday morning, everyone. Welcome in to the opening drive here on 95.9 FM, AM 610, The Sports Animal. And we have a lot for you on this morning's show. Not only are we going to get into the news that broke yesterday afternoon at Fresno State, which I think opens up the Mountain West Conference even more in a year of turnover and change and uncertainty when it comes to football. We got some hoops tonight in the pit. I was out at practice yesterday for the Enchantment, some of the Lobo alumni basketball players out there. Got some conversations. You're going to hear from former Lobo Ramon Martinez, former Lobo Teresa Gary this morning, and talk about hoops, the event, and just the emotions surrounding that game for some of the players, especially Ramon Martinez, who was a teammate of Drew Gordon. And, of course, you can get involved all morning long. 505-246-0610 is the Sports Animal hotline and text line. And, of course, we don't do this alone. We welcome in Cy Riley. Cy, the former Lobo linebacker, a podcaster, a broadcaster now. If you missed him when he's made his debut a little while ago on the opening drive, he is back live this morning. What's up, man? How you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
I'm doing good, man. Appreciate you waking up this morning. I know you're still out with the family on the West Coast, but I know you're excited to get going in all this. And I do want to start with the news that broke yesterday afternoon. And I was out at the pit, and I ran into one of the administrators at UNM. And he's like, man, did you hear the news? I'm like, no, what are you talking about? What happened? Jeff Tedford, the coach at Fresno State, steps down again. But this time he sounds like this could be for good. Jeff Tedford, 62 years old, said in a statement that following a recent medical checkup, which we're talking recent, he had made the decision to step down. He talked with his family. Now, Tedford just last week, we're talking last Thursday, was in Las Vegas representing Fresno State as the head coach and is attending Mountain West Media Days. But he decides to step down. So Tim Skipper, who coached Fresno State in the bowl game right here at the Isleta, New Mexico last year when Fresno State defeated New Mexico State, is going to be the interim coach for the 2024 season. And with Tedford, Fresno State was 45-22. They won 2 Mountain West titles. We saw how good of a team they were. Now, you guys had a nice victory against Fresno State last year, but you look at the Mountain West now, and Bronco Mendenhall, brand new coach at New Mexico. Jeff Schopp, brand new coach at Nevada. Sean Lewis, San Diego State. Jay Savell, Wyoming. Nate Drelling stepping up with Blake Anderson being out in the last couple weeks at Utah State. Ken Niamato Tualolo at San Jose State. Now Fresno State. This is a whole lot of uncertainty. We talk so much about the roster turnover, and that is a giant head coaching change for the Mountain West.
Yeah, there's a lot of turnover recently within the Mountain West Conference. Coach Tedford recruited both me and my older brother out of high school, so we have very close ties with him, and we are thankful for everything that he's done, not only for me and my family, but giving us the opportunity to play Division I football, but also for Fresno State and for the Mountain West Conference. What he's done there, obviously playing and coaching with stars and having those alumni like the Carr brothers, the Devontae Adams, and so he's been able to show what success can look like within the Mountain West Conference. I'm 2-2 against them, beat them there last year. That was a very, very fun game. It's always good to go into a state that you play in, Fresno's not that far from Los Angeles, so I had a lot of family, and it was my birthday weekend. And then obviously freshman year, when they came down to Las Vegas, New Mexico, even though it wasn't, it was in Henderson, Nevada. But, when we played them there, and that was very exciting game. Obviously, our last game of the season, everybody knows the legend with Isaiah Chavez. So, yeah, there's a lot of coaching turnover within the Mountain West, and it's going to be a fun year. I don't think that anybody can really expect what's about to happen, especially when you include the inclusion of Washington State and Oregon State. So it's just going to be a very fun year for college football.
Yeah, in the Mountain West, it's opportunity. And I think if you're New Mexico, especially this season, and with the changes, 60 new players on that roster, so dramatic turnover from the team that you were just playing on last year, I think in year one, you could have a little bit more confidence, a little bit more expectation, just because there's so many more questions than usual in the Mountain West. I thought Fresno State, I don't think this pushes them down the ladder too far as long as they can keep the roster together. And there's always that question, because when there's a coaching change, a 30-day window opens up that players have an opportunity to leave the program. But I feel like that team at the end of the season, with Tim Skipper coaching him in the bowl game, returning some starters, including Mikey Keene at quarterback, it feels like at this point there's not going to be a huge exodus from Fresno State. So I still think that they could be the second best team in the conference, but you have to factor in a coaching change at this point in the season, just like we were looking at Utah State and the situation that happened with Blake Anders. How's that going to affect a roster right before you're scheduled to start practice in a couple weeks?
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting. I don't expect a lot of players to enter the portal just because, like you mentioned, fall camp is literally around the corner. Teams are, coaches are finalizing their spots. Obviously, these players still have to earn it within, fall camp, within the scheme, offense and defensively. Special teams plays a certain role. So, yeah, and then when you have an established culture and like a guy like Coach Tedford, even though, he took a short hiatus, it's still that sense of culture and camaraderie within the teams, amongst the players, within the coaching staff. And then when you have somebody who's already coached, a bowl game, overseeing the preparation for the team to get ready to play. So I don't expect a lot of players to enter the portal, but it definitely, can leave a little doubt in your mind as to, okay, maybe Fresno State won't be what we expect them to be this year, but Fresno State's Fresno State. You still got to go out there and play, the 12 football games or so. So, we're going to see what happens with them. And it's just going to be even again, added excitement into the Mountain West this year, because you don't know. Obviously you have Boise. You don't know who should come out, and win and dominate, to the extent that we've seen before.
Now the Lobos, their first Mountain West Conference game this season is hosting Fresno State. New Mexico has a 0-week contest against Montana State August 24th, and they got that back-to-back power conference swing where they'll be at Arizona and then at Auburn. The first Mountain West game for the Lobos will be home against Fresno State. So by that time, you have 2 to 3 games of film out there, so you have a better idea of what these teams are going to look like. That's why you looked at the preseason poll that came out last week. No surprise that Boise State was at the top. UNLV at number 2 with their young quarterback that transferred was a little bit surprising to me over a Fresno State, but I do think that what Barry Odom did last year, they deserve some of that credit. And then I look at a team like Air Force, and even with them losing a quarterback, 5 offensive linemen, that system is just something I trust in Troy Calhoun. I know, Sai, that you've had to deal with Air Force and what it's like playing them, and they're a team that kind of, regardless of the turnover, I expect to compete in the Mountain West.
Yeah, I love Air Force. When you look at the wing and triple wing tee and triple option, and it's a staple that doesn't seem to age. When you play a team like Air Force, you know exactly what you're going to get. Now, just can you go out there and stop them? Obviously, we haven't had the success in stopping them over the recent years, but when you look at them playing against other schools, Utah State, San Jose State, even Boise State, like, those are always great. Wyoming always plays them tough. So those are great conference games for them. And then Boise, is Boise. Everybody, expects Boise to always be at the top of the conference. But those additions in Washington State and Oregon State are going to throw little wrinkles into everybody's plans, because then now you're still dealing with, everybody within the conference, and then you add these two schools from the Pac-12, Washington State, Oregon State, and what they've been able to do in their respective conferences. Washington State always seems to be finding their way into a bowl game, playing very well. Oregon State has had recent success, a lot of recent success. Coach Christian from UNM now going over to Oregon State, being a tie there. So, yeah, it's going to be a lot of animosity, within all of the schools, but it's just, again, adds to that excitement that everybody's looking forward to when we get into conference play. Who's who are we playing? I know UNM is playing Washington State, again, my birthday weekend in Albuquerque. My older brother went there, so that's going to be a game that I'm looking forward to personally. But, yeah, you're going to get that added, emotion, that added incentive to be the first in the conference already, because you want to go to a Mountain West championship. But now, again, when you add these two schools, you want to be the first one in the conference, be like, hey, we added these two schools from the Pac-12, Power 5 schools. Guess what? We're a group of 5 conference, and we still went out there and handled our business.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see with Oregon State and Washington State, the scheduling agreement. So they're not going to be playing for a Mountain West title, but they're playing all the Mountain West teams. So it,
correct,
as you said, it kind of throws that wrench in there, because that could affect teams getting to a bowl game or coming up a win short when you have a team like Oregon State and Washington State under schedule. For the Lobos, that is their final home game of the season. As you mentioned, here in Albuquerque, Washington State comes to town, just one of 5 home games. So it's a challenging schedule for the Lobos this season with Bronco Mendenhall. But I know there's hope. There's a renewed sense of excitement with global football program, and we'll get your thoughts on that throughout the morning. Is with all the change in the Mountain West, the uncertainty, it is the unknown. Does that make you buy into the Lobos a little bit more? Because all of a sudden there's so many more questions than you usually expect with the amount of coaching turnover. There's going to be 8 coaches. Now, the Spencer Danielson one, he led Boise State to a Mountain West title at the end of the season, was the interim coach, now is the head coach. Still, if you take that out, there's 7 new coaches this season leading teams in the Mountain West Conference. So are you taking the over now? Do you think that this Lobo football team has a chance to go past that win total? If you've got BetMGM, just 2.5, and in a Mountain West Conference that has a lot of these schools right now having hope because of a new future. Give us your thoughts, 505-246-0610. He is Cy Riley. He just wrapped up playing football last year at the University of New Mexico, spent 4 seasons playing at linebacker. Now he's hopping on the opening drive. He's podcasting. He's broadcasting. He's going to be breaking everything down with us this morning. Coming up at 8 o'clock, you hear from Roman Martinez, a former Lobo Hooper. He's back in the pit. He is on the Enchantment roster, so he will be playing in the TBT as they announced that final roster yesterday. I was out at the pit, hanging out with some of those guys a little bit yesterday. A couple of the Enchantment players and some of the Lobo alumni back in town for the event that is going on tonight at the pit. It's the Enchantment versus the Lobo alumni. So it's the warm up for the TBT, but it's also a remembrance of Reuben Douglas, Drew Gordon, Greg Brown, former Lobo Hoopers that lost their lives way too young over the last few months. So it was good to see those guys, but definitely some emotions. And Roman Martinez, who is really good friends with Drew Gordon, shared some of his thoughts about Drew and kind of what pushed him to come back and play in the TBT once again, because this is not easy, for these guys. Somewhere TBT is not paying you. Yeah, you're playing for $1 million at the very end, but there's a lot that goes into it. We'll hear from both Roman Martinez and Darius Gary this morning. We come back on the other side. Did they get it right? We're talking about opportunity when it comes to Mountain West football. Well, is there a top 10 quarterback on America's team? And how in the world can this guy still be considered a top 10 quarterback in the league? We'll dive into that. It's the opening drive here on 95.9 FM, AM 610, the Sports Animal.
It's kickoff time and Believe Podcast. We would like to thank the following sponsors for making this broadcast possible.
What's going on? Who are you guys?
Well, sir, I'm going to pick you up at the DWI checkpoint for drunk driving.
And that's when I have to come down to get you out of jail.
Well, temporarily. I'm Judge Torres.
They call him the Hammer. Hey, hot off the presses, champ.
I'm real proud of you, honey.
Way to make him happy back home, Captain. Who's that? That's your new buddy in jail.
Young driver, this one. Hard to get her out. She'd been drinking. This one. Both of them gone. They'd been drinking, and he drove clear off the road. This was my family. Drunk driver hit us. And my wife and our daughter, they didn't make it.
Hey, look! It's Dwight Goodman!
Boom! This place is hot. Let's see if anyone needs my help. How about I drive you madman home, huh? I got this, Dwight. I'm the designated driver. Boom. Sweet? Does anyone need Dwight's help getting home tonight?
No thanks, Romeo. I've got a taxi all lined up.
Drive safe, Dwight.
Boom! Boom!
These days, it's important to know people and businesses you can trust. There's a lot of places where you can buy a vehicle, but there's only a few local dealerships where you'll find honest people who have your best interests in mind. And Fiesta Kia is one of them. We've been helping our neighbors save money and drive dependable cars for years, and we'd love to help you. With new Kias arriving daily, you'll love our selection and the peace of mind you'll get driving a Kia from Fiesta. So stop by and see us today at Fiesta Kia on Lomas, or just start driving now at fiestakia.com.
Burglary takes place in the United States approximately every 15 seconds. International Protective Service is your answer for commercial and residential security in all of Albuquerque. IPS will work with your monitoring company for fast, reliable response times. You can rest easy knowing you, your family, or your company is watched over by International Protective Service. Call International Protective Service today.
Young driver, this one. Hard to get her out. She'd been drinking. This one. Both of them gone. They'd been drinking, and he drove clear off the road. This was my family. Drunk driver hit us. And my wife and our daughter, they didn't make it.
Hi, I'm Steve Stucker here for Dr. Robert Melendez and the Juliet Eye Institute. You may remember me like this, but no more. The glasses are gone. I tossed them months ago because of a brand new procedure from Dr. Melendez known as RLE, Refractive Lens Exchange. The latest technology, the best eyesight I've ever had in my life, and you can check it out by clicking on the link in the description right here.
We would like to thank the following sponsors for making this broadcast possible. International Protective Services is a proud supporter of ProView Sports and New Mexico Youth.
So is Aaron still a top 10 quarterback? What are the expectations for two quarterbacks with new places coming off Achilles injuries? And how should we look at the young quarterbacks in the NFL? And how do NFL executives, scouts, and coaches look at the quarterback position? Because there's so much that goes into it. We pile everything on the quarterback. There's a head coach and there's a quarterback. They have a win-loss record attached to their name. And we sit here and scream all day, every day, the entire year that if you don't have a quarterback, you don't have anything. But how much help does that quarterback need? What level of talent does that quarterback have versus the skill position players versus the guys that can make good players great, or the good quarterbacks that need great players to look better? There's so many factors in the game of football, but sometimes we boil it down to just that one piece. And it's the quarterback position. It's the opening drive here on 95.9 FM, AM 610, the Sports Animal. JJ Buck, joined by Cy Riley, former Lobo linebacker, just wrapped up 4 years playing at the University of New Mexico. He's joining us this morning. We got Bobcat holding it down, producing this morning. So, Cy, you've dealt with challenging quarterbacks your entire college career, the different things that they bring to the table, whether it's the pocket passers, the guys that get out of the pocket, the option game that you see in college. What were some of the things about an opposing quarterback that gave you the most trouble?
Dual threat quarterbacks.
Yep.
When they have the ability to, go in and out of the pocket, throw on the run. When they get into the second level, they can take the top off with their arm and their legs. Quarterbacks that don't just, sit in the pocket and try and dissect you that way, but when they're out and moving around, stretching your zones when you're playing zones, man coverage, you got to hold on to your, wide receiver just a little bit longer. Dual threat quarterbacks are always the most scary quarterbacks to face, just because there's always a level of uncertainty that you have with them. That's why this year is going to be great to see a guy like Devin Dampierre for the Lobos, because, again, he's able to throw on the run, stretch the defense out a little bit, make you, think about what's going to happen, what your coverages are going to look like. And then when you get those out-of-pocket throws, exciting, putting the ball in the money. So if you have a dual-threat quarterback, I think that's what brings defenses the most stress and defensive coordinators. Is just because there's just a level of doubt that you might have, like, no matter if you send the perfect blitz, if you're sending the perfect coverage, if this dude takes, 5 yards to his right, and his wide receiver sees that, and now they're running 3 different routes. So, it's just one of those things.
Yeah, and it's no surprise when you look at this ESPN survey. They surveyed 80 execs, coaches, scouts in the NFL. We don't need to spend a lot of time talking about the top list. We got it. It's Patrick Mahomes, a guy that can make those off-platform throws that can extend plays. It's Joe Burrow. It's Josh Allen, the top 3. Then you have 2-time NFL MVP Lamar Jackson, 4. I thought Matthew Stafford at 5 was really interesting because it brings me into that space of when you're looking at quarterback play and you're trying to think of it, from the mindset of an NFL person right now. It's kind of balancing talent plus what you've done versus expectations right now. And I still think even at 36 years old, Matthew Stafford, I believe he's that guy because we watched right when he got to Los Angeles. And we've seen Detroit blossom under Dan Campbell, but those years with Matthew Stafford and the Lions, they couldn't put everything together. We knew Stafford had the talent. There's a lot of dysfunction around the organization. They never really had the team. Well, then you put him on a squad that went to the Super Bowl with Jared Goff, and all Matthew Stafford did in that first season was win a Super Bowl. So I think that when we have this conversation a lot about the best quarterbacks in the game, Stafford just kind of pushed down with his age. But I actually agree. I think Stafford is still a top 5-10 quarterback in the NFL, like this list says. What I do think is interesting is when you get down to number 8 and Aaron Rodgers. And I know Aaron Rodgers is a savior for the Jets. They were a team that they won 7 games with the mess that they had at quarterback position. And they feel that even if it's not the Aaron Rodgers of 2 years ago, any Aaron Rodgers is going to be the difference for this team. But I just can't look at a quarterback that's 40 years old, coming off an Achilles injury, and think he can be one of the 10 best quarterbacks in the NFL next season. Good job, good effort with what you've done, but I don't see Aaron Rodgers playing at a top 10 quarterback level next year.
Yeah, it's going to be it's funny because, the New York Jets, back in the day they had Geno Smith, and even though I say back in the day, it wasn't even that long ago. But Geno Smith, then you move on to Sam Darnold out of USC, and then, obviously Zach Wilson, and them just trying to find a quarterback. Aaron Rodgers, I think we all can agree, is better than, those 3 gentlemen.